I was halfway through rinsing the plates when Mom called from the living room. "Don't forget the shrimp platter in the fridge." Her tone was light, but in our family that platter was sacred. We'd been saving it for the weekend cookout, the expensive kind, marinated and sealed with a "do not touch" sticky note that might as well have been written in blood. I remember glancing at the clock, 8:17 p.m., and thinking how unusually quiet the house felt. Dad was outside tinkering with the car, my sister Claire was upstairs scrolling through her phone, and the TV hummed on low with some cooking show in the background. Pretty normal night. Until it wasn't. When I opened the fridge, the platter wasn't there. Not moved, not shrugged behind the milk, just gone. The cold space where it sat looked oddly clean, almost wiped down. I blinked, leaned in, and said the words that would ruin our night. "The shrimp is gone." Nobody heard me the first time, so I said it louder. "The shrimp. It's gone." Mom froze in the doorway like I'd just confessed to murder. "What do you mean gone?" "I mean it's not here," I said, half laughing, half confused. She hurried over, checked the fridge herself, then pulled open both drawers as if the seafood might have changed shape and hidden. "It was here 2 hours ago. Your father bought it fresh this morning. He even showed me the receipt." By now Dad had poked his head into the kitchen, grease still on his hands. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, Claire came downstairs with her phone flashlight pointed at us. "Did someone say shrimp?" Mom turned, her voice trembling. "It's missing." Claire blinked once, frowned, then said what none of us expected. "Should I call 911? Dad frowned. "For shrimp?" But Mom's face had gone pale in a way that made him stop joking. She looked at the empty space inside the fridge with something like fear. "That shrimp wasn't just shrimp," she whispered. For a moment, nobody spoke. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Then Claire, without another word, unlocked her phone and started dialing. And that's when I realized this wasn't about dinner anymore. When Claire pressed the green button on her phone, it felt like the whole room held its breath. The quiet hum from the fridge suddenly seemed louder, pressing against the back of my skull. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice came through, calm and distant. Claire hesitated. Our shrimp is gone." There was a pause. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Did you say shrimp?" "Yes," Claire said, her voice shaking now. "The shrimp. It's missing from our fridge." I rubbed my forehead, mortified. "Claire, hang up." But before I could stop her, Mom snatched the phone from her. "You don't understand," she said, her words clipped and trembling. "It's the shrimp. My husband bought it this morning from Harbor 14 Market. It had a yellow tag and—" She stopped, lowering her voice. "You need to send someone." The operator must have heard whatever was in her tone because their voice shifted. "Ma'am, is someone in the house with you?" I froze. "What? No," I said. "Nobody's in the—" Mom glared at me, finger over her lips. "We're not sure," she whispered into the line. "We heard something earlier, a thump from the back door. We checked the locks, but—" Now I felt a chill slide down my spine. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Dad finally stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. His face was tense, not confused anymore, just tense, like he'd expected this moment. "Everyone listen," he said. "Let's just calm down. Get away from the kitchen." "Dad?" I said. "What's going on?" He didn't answer, just reached into the cabinet above the microwave, the one that always stayed locked, and pulled out a small metal box, the kind that looks too serious to be sitting in a family kitchen. Mom lowered the phone as he clicked open the box. Inside were two things, a folded stack of papers and a flash drive taped to a plastic evidence bag. "What is that?" Claire asked, stepping closer. "Proof," Dad said, "that we were right to keep that shrimp under lock and key." "The shrimp?" I said, my voice climbing. "What the hell are you people talking about? It's food." Dad sighed. "Not exactly." Before he could explain, the operator's voice came through the speaker. "Sir, officers are on their way. Please stay on the line." Mom's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. "No lights," she said suddenly. "Turn them off." The room went black except for Claire's flashlight beam and the blue glow of the fridge. Then came the smell, faint, briny, and electric, like the air after lightning. A sound followed from the back porch, slow, deliberate footsteps. Dad's eyes met mine. It wasn't supposed to find us here, he said quietly. The phone speaker crackled. Sir, can you confirm your address? We're tracing your location now. But Dad had already moved toward the back door, metal box clutched in one hand like he was expecting someone, or something, to knock. I stood there, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, staring at that empty fridge like it was a crime scene. For the first time I wondered what exactly had been sealed in that yellow-tagged container, and why my parents looked like losing it wasn't just bad luck. It was disaster. A heavy thud echoed against the glass door. Just once. Firm. Like a warning. Mom whispered, "Don't move." And in the dark, something brushed against the window. The sound came again, softer this time, more like a drag than a knock. Something brushing against the glass from outside. Claire clutched my arm. I could feel her pulse thudding through her wrist like a trapped bird. Dad motioned for us to stay still, then quietly reached for the flashlight on the counter. The beam sliced through the dark, pale blue-white light gliding across the window pane, and landed on nothing. Just the faint reflection of our own faces staring back at us. Except, there was something there, barely visible. A smear across the glass like wet fingerprints. "I'll check it," Dad whispered. "Are you insane?" Mom hissed. "You'll just—" He cut her off with a look. The kind that ends any argument before it starts. As he stepped toward the door, I caught the tiniest detail almost lost in the dark. His hand was shaking. My father never shook. While he moved to the porch, I crouched beside Mom. "You need to tell me what's happening," I said. "Why did you call the cops over shrimp?" She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for years. "Because it isn't shrimp anymore," she whispered. I stared at her. "That's not... What does that even..." But before I could finish, we heard Dad's voice. "It's open." The room went still. "What's open?" I called out, but there was no response, just the faint creak of the screen door. It felt wrong to breathe, wrong to blink. Every instinct told me whatever was outside shouldn't be here. Then came the flash, a split second of blue light from somewhere beyond the porch. Cold, electric, unnatural. Mom stood abruptly, eyes wide. "Oh God," she whispered. "It's reacting." Reacting. The word lodged in my throat like a bone. "What is it, Mom?" She turned to me, her voice low but steady. "Do you remember the summer your father took that trip? The fishing job up north?" "Yeah, he said he was helping with some deep water catch project." She nodded, gripping the counter like she needed it to anchor her. "Half our savings went into that trip. He came back with one crate, frozen solid. He told me it was a rare species, experimental, something the Marine Lab was studying but didn't want public. He said they'd pay once it was confirmed safe." Even in the dim light, I could see her trembling. But whatever he brought home that night, it wasn't safe. It wasn't what he thought. Outside, something clanged. The metallic rattle of trash cans tipping in slow sequence, one by one. Claire whimpered. "Mom, what's it doing?" She didn't answer. I finally grabbed the flashlight from the table and aimed it toward the kitchen door. The beam wavered across the window. And this time I saw it clearly. Frozen streaks trailing down the glass, like whatever touched it was burning cold. Dad stumbled back inside, face pale, chest heaving. The metal box hung open in his hand. "It's not there," he gasped. "I know," Mom said quietly. "It found us first." Silence, thick and heavy, broken only by the soft static from the phone still on speaker. "Sir," said the 911 operator, voice crackling through. "Units are about 3 minutes out. Do not leave the property." Dad snatched the phone. "No, tell them to stay back," he barked. "If they touch it, they'll—" He stopped suddenly, as if realizing he'd said too much. "Dad," my voice was shaking now. "What do you mean if they touch it?" He swallowed hard. "The last time someone handled it, they didn't survive long enough to tell me what it was." Claire gasped. "You mean someone died?" He nodded slightly. "Not humanly either." Outside, a dog started barking somewhere down the street, frantic, high-pitched, like it understood something no one else did. Then it cut off mid-bark. Mom grabbed a dish towel and pressed it over her mouth like she couldn't breathe. "It's not supposed to wake," she whispered. "What is it?" I demanded. Dad didn't answer right away. He stared toward the back window, jaw tight, like he was watching something move that I couldn't see. It came from a trench, he said slowly, 200 miles off Clearwater Ridge. The crew pulled up what they thought was tangled netting until it started to hum. Whole sea glowing around it, cold enough to frost the metal deck. He turned to me, his face lined with something deeper than fear. Shame, maybe. They called it a shrimp. It looked like one, kind of. But the lab said it had cells that shouldn't exist on this planet. The kind that carry electric charge and tissue memory even when frozen. I stared at him, disbelief clawing at my chest. So you brought an alien shrimp home? He actually laughed, a short, bitter sound. That would have been easier, kid. Then another flash lit up the window, a pulse of blue-white that cast shadows through the kitchen like lightning. And in that half-second, all four of us saw it. Something slick, translucent, and wrong pressed against the glass, like the outline of a massive claw, or tentacle, dragging slowly across the window. Claire screamed. Mom dropped the phone. Outside, the sirens began to wail, but all I could do was stare. Because through that glow and frost, I swore I saw movement inside the thing, like veins crawling, alive with their own light. That's when I realized it wasn't just here for the shrimp. It was the shrimp, and we hadn't lost it. It had escaped. The sirens got louder, first a distant wail, then a scream bouncing between houses. Blue and red strobes flickered against our windows, painting the kitchen in a pulse that matched my hammering heart. Dad pressed his back to the counter, staring through the glass like any second. The thing might crash straight through it. "Nobody move," he hissed. But it was already too late for calm. The air was cold, unnaturally cold, our breath visible even though the heat was still on. Something mechanical started whirring from behind the fridge. For a second, I thought it was just the motor. Then I realized the entire appliance was vibrating. Claire stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. "What's happening?" The magnets on the fridge door clinked off one by one. The hum grew sharper, like metal straining against itself. Then, silence. Completely still. And from inside the fridge came a hollow click. Dad took one step forward. The freezer door slid open a fraction of an inch on its own. Mom grabbed my hand. "Don't go near it." But I wasn't thinking. My body moved before I could reason. I crouched and shone the flashlight into the freezer. Frost rimmed the edges, but the shelves were empty except for a faint trail of ice leading down toward the corner, then disappearing under the sealed floor seam. That's when the smell hit. Squid ink, ozone, and infection. It wasn't gone. It had gone down. Our basement. I turned to Dad. "It's under the house." He nodded once. "It'll be drawn to heat, movement, electricity. Same thing all over again." "What do you mean again?" I snapped. He didn't answer. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. Before I could press him, flashlight beams cut through the blinds. A voice shouted from outside. Firm, authority crisp against the chaos. "Clearwater PD, is everyone inside safe?" Mom bolted toward the front door. "They're here." Dad reached for her arm. "No, don't open it yet." But she was already unbolting the lock, panic overriding logic. The second the door opened, the blast of cold air hit hard enough to sting. 2 officers stood on the porch, guns drawn, flashlights aimed toward the yard. "What's going on here, ma'am?" one asked, eyes scanning the dark behind her. Mom's voice broke. "It's in the basement, whatever he brought home. It's in the basement." They exchanged a look I recognized too well. The kind cops give people when they think it's domestic tension, not danger. Before they could say anything else, a bang exploded from below the floorboards, violent, metallic, like the foundation itself had cracked. Then came the sound of liquid sloshing, thick and wet. The older officer froze. "What was that?" I heard Dad whisper. "Don't go down there." But the younger one stepped inside anyway, flashlight aimed toward the basement door. It only took him 3 steps, 1 breath. Then the hum started again. Louder, closer. The basement door handle began to turn. Not smoothly, in jolts, like something was testing the mechanism from the other side. The electricity flickered, once, twice, and then every light in the house blew at once. The only illumination left came from the officers' flashlights, narrow cones of light cutting into deeper shadows. The door creaked open. A smell hit the air so sharp I gagged, like salt water mixed with blood and burned plastic. The officer at the door aimed his gun toward the dark gap and shouted, "Identify yourself!" The hum responded, High-pitched, mechanical, almost like static feedback. Then I saw it. Not the whole thing, just the edge. A slick limb, folding over the stairwell like translucent rope. It shimmered faintly, light pulsing inside it, as though veins of bioluminescent circuitry ran through it. The officer fired once. The bullet didn't sound like it hit flesh. It sounded like metal striking ice. The creature reacted instantly. A flare of blue exploded from the stairs, and both officers were thrown backward as if gravity had reversed. One hit the wall, the other slid across the tile floor, his light rolling across the room. My father lunged forward, pulling one of them away from the reach of the limb. "Get back!" he shouted. "It charges through contact," Claire screamed, gripping my arm so tightly her nails dug into skin. The thing slithered further inside, breaking through drywall with ease. It wasn't shaped like anything natural, not even shrimp-like anymore. Just a writhing bundle of translucent cables, each pulsing with light that brightened every time we moved. Dad held out the flash drive. "This is what they wanted," he yelled toward it. The creature stopped. For half a second, the air pressure in the room dropped, like the whole house exhaled. Then the memories slammed into me. Dad, last week, sneaking frozen packages from the garage into the main fridge. The hiss I'd heard one night while half asleep. Something thawing, not leaking. The smudge across the freezer I thought was melted ice. And the hum, subtle, constant, that had been vibrating through the floors all day. He hadn't bought seafood. He'd brought home a living core. Whatever had been trapped in that trench wasn't dead at all. It had been dormant, preserved. And now that it was awake, it wasn't reacting by instinct. It was remembering. "Dad," I said, voice breaking, "it knows you." He glanced at me slowly, and in that one look I saw the truth. Fear mixed with guilt, like he'd just realized the same thing. "I think," he whispered, "it always did." The creature's light flickered, rhythmically now, in short bursts, almost like code. The flash drive vibrated in his hand, responding. Then, all at once, the blue glare intensified until the room turned white. And everything went silent. When sound returned, it wasn't the creature's hum. It was radio chatter. The surviving officer shouting into his comm. "Possible chemical exposure, heavy static discharge, requesting..." The words cut out mid-sentence as the lights returned. The creature was gone. The door to the basement hung open like a mouth that had finished feeding. Dad stood frozen, still holding the flash drive, now scorched black around the edges. Mom touched his shoulder. "Where did it go?" He turned toward us, voice hollow. "Not far enough, because down in the basement something began to knock. Slow, measured, 3 times. Not random, like it wanted back in. The knock came 3 times, each one faint but precise, more rhythm than force. The sound crawled up through the floorboards and into my chest like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. No one moved. Even the surviving officer froze mid-transmission, eyes wide, like he was trying to decide whether to answer the sound or run. Then the 4th knock never came. Instead, we heard a drip, slow, steady, from somewhere below. Dad exhaled like a diver breaching the surface. "We're sealing the door." Mom stared at him. "With what, Michael? Hope?" He didn't answer. He dragged the dining table across the floor until its legs screeched against the wood and wedged it tight against the basement entrance. It felt useless, symbolic even, like whispering "stay out" to a storm. The room smelled like ozone and rot. The air felt thick, almost damp. I noticed condensation climbing the walls, not dripping down, but up, drawn toward the ceiling. The surviving officer staggered to his feet, coughing, gun trembling in his hand. His partner lay unconscious near the fridge, still breathing. "What happened here?" he demanded hoarsely. Dad straightened. "Containment breach," he said automatically, the tone of someone who's rehearsed this conversation in nightmares. "Containment breach," the officer repeated. "Is there someone down there?" Dad didn't answer. He just said, "Radio your captain. Tell him not to approach the house. No weapons, no flashlights, no drones." The officer hesitated. "You're not making sense." Something shifted beneath us again. Not a vibration, more like pressure pushing upward. The lights flickered. That was enough for the officer to stumble backward, dragging his partner toward the door. "I'm calling this in," he snapped. "Everyone stays put." When they left, the front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Through the silence that followed, I could hear the muffled chaos outside. Radio chatter, boots on pavement, someone shouting something about biohazard zone. Mom collapsed onto a chair, trembling. Claire sat beside her, face pale, arms wrapped tight around herself. I stayed standing because something in me refused to stop moving. Stillness felt like permission for it to return. "Dad," I said, "you need to tell me everything, now." He rubbed his eyes, leaving faint black smudges from the flash drive he'd been clutching. "I didn't just fish it out," he finally said. "It wasn't a find, it was a delivery." "What does that mean?" He looked out the window where sirens painted the sky red and blue. "A lab out of Clearwater Ridge reached out after my last job. Said they'd been tracking heat signatures in the trench, readings that looked biological but too stable for any creature they knew. They wanted local trawlers to take samples. So I went. The net caught something solid, frozen but pulsing underneath, like an engine." He swallowed hard. "They said it was safe in ice, that it needed salt to stay dormant. They just needed me to transport it. But when I brought it back, they weren't answering anymore. The entire lab was gone." Claire blinked, her voice small. "Gone as in closed," he shook his head. "Gone as in burned down to the foundation. The article said chemical explosion, no survivors." Silence again. The slow dripping from below had stopped. "That's when you put it in our fridge," I said bitterly. "It was stable for months," he snapped. "I checked it every week, until the power cut last night. That storm surge must have tripped the breaker. It thawed before I noticed." Mom let out a strangled laugh. "You brought a weapon, Michael, into our house, with our kids." He slammed his hand on the counter. "I thought it was data, Ellen. They called it a bioorganic prototype, not a monster." The weight of his words settled on all of us differently. For Mom, fury. For Claire, terror. For me, an ache that went deeper than fear. Shame, maybe. Or the faint burn of realizing your parents might have doomed you out of misplaced trust. Outside, something crashed. I ran to the window. Police floodlights swept the yard. Half a dozen officers were shouting near the storm drain by the driveway. The metal cover had warped, bent outward, like something had pushed through it. "Dad," I said, pointing, "it's not in the basement anymore." He squinted through the glass. "No," he murmured. "It's nesting." "Nesting," Claire repeated. He nodded slowly. "It's drawn to current. That drain runs straight to the town reservoir." Mom stood up. "So call someone. The military, the Coast Guard, whatever it takes." Dad shook his head. "It absorbs electric fields. The moment they bring equipment near it, it'll grow stronger." Outside, one of the floodlights flickered. Then another. I strained my eyes toward the storm drain, and saw thin tendrils glinting in the light, spreading outward, plant-like, shimmering faint blue. They were wiring themselves along the ground. A radio somewhere outside crackled violently, whined with static, then went silent. The youngest officer shouted, "We're losing comms!" Dad turned toward us, voice urgent, desperate. "Everyone downstairs. We have to seal the basement now before it reopens the tunnel." Mom's face twisted in disbelief. "Downstairs? Are you insane?" But the moment we heard the first police car explode, a sudden bloom of fire that illuminated the entire street, her argument ended there. The sky glowed orange, ash raining against our windows. Dad grabbed my arm. "We built the containment wall down there first, concrete and sealant. If we can get the salt from the garage, I might be able to freeze it again." I followed because there wasn't time to think anymore. Claire trailed close behind, clutching her phone like a talisman. When we reached the basement door, the air that seeped through was colder than before. It smelled like old tide pools and copper. Dad pushed aside the wedge table. The moment the door cracked open, a faint blue mist spilled out, curling across our feet like smoke. From somewhere inside came a faint electric hum. Not aggressive now, gentle, tested, listening. Mom whispered from behind us, "It wants something." I felt it too. Not sound exactly, but pressure, brushing inside my skull like a question trying to form words. Dad took a breath. "It's broadcasting again." "Broadcasting what?" He didn't answer. He just stepped into the stairwell, salt canister in one hand, flashlight in the other. Halfway down, he turned his head slightly, eyes catching the dim blue. "If it responds," he said softly, "don't come for me." "Dad!" He smiled without looking back. "I brought it here. I'll finish it here." Then he disappeared into the light below. For a few seconds, all we heard was the steady scrape of his boots against concrete. Then a hiss. Then nothing. Claire clutched my hand so tight I thought she'd break it. The silence stretched until it was unbearable. Until we finally heard his voice drifting up from the dark, barely audible. "It's learning. It's..." His words ended in a sound that wasn't human. Mom screamed. Something hit the stairs, sliding fast. A flash of blue erupted from below. I slammed the door shut, heart pounding, feeling the wood vibrate against my palms like something beneath it was laughing. Outside, new sirens, deeper, mechanical, not from police cars anymore. The kind that mean whatever's happening isn't local anymore. I don't remember the explosion, or the flashing lights, or the screaming. What I do remember is the silence after, the kind that feels pressed into your ears like cotton, where sound doesn't so much fade as get erased. They told me later there was a fire, that the containment teams flooded the property before dawn. They told me whatever was left of the basement was unrecognizable. Part seafood processor, part chemical burn site. They said there was no biological trace of my father. That phrase, no biological trace, doesn't comfort me. It feels like the bureaucratic version of we can't explain what's missing. The first 3 days after, I stayed in an observation room at the Clearwater Emergency Center, hooked up to monitors I couldn't name. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time the fluorescent lights flickered, I flinched. Mom barely spoke. Claire sat with her most nights, staring at nothing, clutching the same phone she'd tried to call 911 with. She doesn't dial anymore. Just scrolls. Scrolling through nothing, over and over. They told us we were safe now, but I don't think safe means what it used to. The man who finally interviewed me wasn't a cop. Not really. His badge didn't have a precinct on it, just a seal I didn't recognize and the letters OSD etched beneath. Office of Scientific Defense. He introduced himself as Agent Parker. His tone was neutral, patient, the way someone talks to a survivor or a potential witness, or a liability. "Noah, right?" he said, setting a tape recorder on the table. "Your father's name was Michael Pierce." "Yes." He hummed softly, pressing a button. "You lived at 43 Winslow Drive. Local PD records confirm anomalous electrical readings, multiple energy discharges, one confirmed explosion at 01:24 hours. He looked up. "I'd like you to walk me through what happened after you heard the knocking." I took a deep breath. "He went down there with the salt, said he'd stop it, then..." I hesitated. "Then light, cold light, like it wasn't coming from a bulb, more like air glowing on its own." Parker leaned forward slightly. "Did you hear anything?" "Yeah," I said. "It talked." That made him pause. "Talked how?" "Not with words exactly. It sounded like pressure. Inside my skull. Like it was echoing through bone. It didn't say words, it sent shapes, images." "What kind of images?" "Blue water, darkness, falling nets, and then..." I trailed off, eyes unfocused. "A shape under the ice, bigger than a house. I think it was remembering where it came from." Parker wrote something down without looking at me. "Your father mentioned anything similar?" I nodded. "He called it an intelligence drift. Said it carried memory through salinity. That it could move from physical matter into data. That the flash drive could..." Parker's head snapped up. "The flash drive?" "Yeah," I said. "He used it to communicate, I think. It reacted when the thing was near." He leaned back slowly, exhaling. "Did you see what happened to it?" I shook my head. Last I saw it was in his hand. Parker closed the notepad, face unreadable. "We'll follow up on that." He stood, but before leaving added almost gently, "Noah, if you remember anything unusual, changes in light, noise, or your own thoughts, write them down immediately. Don't trust your phone to keep notes." "Why not?" He gave me the kind of look that answers nothing and walked out. They relocated us to a hotel an hour inland. The kind of place that smells like disinfectant and denial. Reporters swarmed the parking lot for days, demanding statements about the Clearwater mutation case. Most of the footage never aired. The city declared half the neighborhood contaminated and closed off the rest for cleanup. Mom stayed on medication after the breakdown. Claire stopped sleeping altogether. As for me, I write, not for the news, not for therapy. Just to make sense of the hours that don't connect right anymore. Because something does happen still, mostly at night. The first time I thought it was just me reliving the trauma. The faint hum under the mattress, the static taste in the air, the shadow of light flickering through the vents even when the lamps are off. But then it started syncing with electricity, flickers on screens, patterns in Wi-Fi signals, pixels on the hotel TV aligning into those same rhythmic pulses I saw on the creature's skin. It's learning again. Or maybe it never stopped. A week later, Agent Parker returned. He looked rougher this time, tired, drawn. When he sat down across from me, he didn't bring the recorder, just a sealed envelope. He slid it across the table. "Your father," he said, "didn't die when the house burned." My stomach clenched. "You found him?" "In a way." Parker hesitated. "We recovered remnants, neural signatures embedded in corrupted data sectors, traces that match his brain frequency." I just stared at him. "You mean his memories?" "Possibly," Parker said. "Encoded into something digital. We think he was trying to transfer information when the event triggered." "Information about what?" "The shrimp," he said flatly. He slid a photo from the envelope. It showed the flash drive, or what was left of it, melted silver residue fused into a chunk of glassy plastic, the shape of a fingerprint still impressed in it. "He was attempting to upload something," Parker continued. "But before the device burned, it sent a single data packet over nearby wireless frequencies." He handed me another sheet. Coordinates. It took me a few seconds to recognize them. Clearwater Reservoir, the same one the storm drain fed into. Parker's voice softened. "If it's still active, it's dormant underwater. But the thing about memory, Noah, is that it doesn't always sleep." I looked up at him. "What do you want from me?" "Records show your father synced his neural frequency with the specimen during containment monitoring. That connection doesn't shut off easily." I laughed softly, hollow. "You think it can still reach me?" Parker didn't smile. "I think it already has." That night, after he left, I walked down to the reservoir. It was cordoned off, lined with floodlights and swaying plastic fences. But water doesn't care about fences. The surface looked calm, glassy. Too calm. And under it, faint but visible if you stood still long enough, were small lights pulsing deep below, like a heartbeat buried under miles of dark. Blue, rhythmic, patient. I stood there until my reflection blurred into it. And for just a second, I could have sworn I heard my father's voice. Not in words. Just a whisper threaded through static. "It remembers you." The reflection shifted. In the glassy silhouette for a heartbeat's length, I didn't look like myself. And when the lights under the water flickered in response, they flickered in a pattern I knew too well. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. The same rhythm we heard from the floor that night. I backed away slowly, the air suddenly colder, the smell of salt water rising though there wasn't a drop spilled. Behind me the floodlights dimmed, just for a heartbeat, and in that flash of dark, I could have sworn I saw the shape again. Not in the water this time, in the electrical lines overhead, running, learning. When the lights came back on, the reservoir looked the same, but I knew better. Dad always said some things evolve faster when you try to bury them. And somewhere out there, a ripple of blue light crossed the surface, small, almost beautiful, almost.